I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to catch my wife cheating on me, let alone with my own brother. It was our anniversary of all times. We planned a weekend getaway, just us, a little cabin in the woods, a chance to escape the city's noise. The day had started perfect. I remember waking up to the smell of fresh coffee drifting through the open window, the sun peeking through the trees. We laughed, joked about how long we'd known each other, and wondered if we'd make it another year. I was feeling good, maybe a little too good, like everything was finally falling into place. That night back in the cabin after a nice dinner, I was lying on the couch scrolling through my phone. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows across the room. My wife Lisa was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she cleaned up. It was quiet, almost too quiet. Then I overheard a conversation that made my stomach churn. It started with her voice, low but clear enough. She was laughing, a sort of nervous, breathy laugh I hadn't heard before. But it wasn't her usual happy laugh. It sounded different. That's when I caught the words, muffled but unmistakable. She was whispering, "I can't believe we're actually doing this. No one will ever find out." And then my brother's voice, "It's our secret, okay? Just tonight, just this once." My legs felt like concrete. My palms went clammy. I froze, straining to hear more, but their voices dropped lower. Still, the words sank in. I knew enough then to realize they weren't talking about a surprise gift or some innocent joke. No, they were talking about their affair, my wife and my brother, the two people I trusted most in this world. I felt like I had been punched in the gut, a sick twisting in my stomach that refused to go away. I stayed perfectly still, listening as the conversation shifted. I could hear the bed squeaking softly, then muffled breathing. My mind raced, trying to process what I'd just overheard. How long had it been going on? Was this just a one-time thing, or something they'd been hiding for months? The doubt gnawed at me, more vicious than anything else. I finally moved, inching closer to the door to get a better listen, but I knew I'd heard enough for tonight. My head was pounding, my skin prickling with heat that didn't come from the fireplace. When they finally finished, I retreated to the bedroom and stared at the ceiling. My hands were trembling. My heart hammered so loud I thought it might burst. I couldn't sleep. All I kept thinking was, how long had they been lying to me? How often had I been so blind? I kept replaying the moments, Lisa's smile, her touch, the way she looked at me when we danced at dinner, all tainted now, cracked like glass. I had no idea whether I'd known her at all, or if I'd been living in some kind of happy delusion. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach I couldn't untie. I wanted to confront her then and there, but I knew I needed a plan. You don't just blow up your life without thinking, especially not when betrayal cuts this deep. I felt a strange calm settle over me. I had to find out how long this had been going on, get evidence, and figure out what my next move was. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. I needed to come up with a plan, but the first step was clear. I couldn't pretend everything was okay anymore. I looked over at her, still sleeping peacefully, and felt a cold rage boiling inside me. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about respect, about dignity. I had trusted her, loved her, and now I was more alone than I'd ever been. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew I wouldn't be the one to end this quietly. I got up quietly, grabbed my phone, and started thinking about how to gather proof. I had a suspicion this wasn't their first night. I just had to figure out how deep the rabbit hole went and what my revenge would look like. This was going to change everything, I could feel it. And I wasn't going to let them think they'd gotten away with it, not without paying a price. It was just the beginning, but I could already see the outline of what I had to do, and I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I spent the next few days trying to keep my cool while gathering evidence. I couldn't just burn everything down without knowing exactly how deep the rabbit hole went. I started by installing a recording app on my phone, hidden inside my jacket pocket, just to catch any future conversations. I also kept a close eye on my wife's phone and her movements, not in a creepy way, but enough to notice patterns. The more I watched, the more suspicious I became that this was no single mistake, no one-time lapse. It looked like they'd been sneaking around for months. One evening I found her leaving his house, my brother, with a hoodie pulled over her head, hurried and anxious. She looked over her shoulder like she was trying to avoid being seen. That's when I snapped a picture. It wasn't much, but it was enough to prove she was hiding something. The evidence started stacking up like a wall I couldn't ignore. After I'd collected enough, I sat her down in the living room. She was asleep on the couch when I came home that night, exhausted but alert. I knew I had to do this carefully. No yelling. No accusations, just facts. I took a deep breath, my stomach tightening again, and said, "We need to talk now." She looked up, blinking, surprised. "What's wrong?" I kept my voice steady but cold. "Tell me what this is." I pulled out the photo I'd taken and placed it on the table between us. Her face went pale, her eyes darted to the image. "You've been lying to me, haven't you? How long has this been going on?" Her voice cracked. "It's not what it looks like. We were just. I didn't mean for it to happen. Just wasn't meant to happen. That's your excuse. After all these months, how long have you been messing around with him?" I demanded. She looked down, tears pooling in her eyes. "A few months. We couldn't help ourselves. It just happened." That was a lie, I knew it. The evidence was too clear, the timing too perfect. I felt the heat rising in my chest like I was about to explode. And yet I stayed calm. I told her, "You think I'm stupid. You think I don't see what's happening here?" She begged, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't do this. I didn't mean for it to hurt you. We were lonely, confused, and it just happened. I swear I love you. I never wanted to lose you." Lies, every word. The sick part was I still loved her once. But now that love had morphed into something darker, something more vengeful. I knew I had to act, but I needed a plan. I sat there, feeling the weight of betrayal on my shoulders, trying to decide how far I was willing to go. The next step was clear. I needed to show her I was serious about ending this, about making her regret ever crossing that line. I told her I'd think about everything, but I already knew what would happen next. I needed to take control before she got the chance to deny everything or spin some story to save herself. That night, I stayed up late, going over every detail of what I'd do. I'd confront my brother next, but not directly. I wanted to catch him in the act, maybe set a trap. I also thought about how I'd handle her after everything came out. I wasn't going to just walk away. I wanted to make sure she paid for this betrayal. I'd always believed in fairness, in doing the right thing. But right now, I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies. I had to decide how much I was willing to sacrifice to get my revenge. Was I going to let this go, or was I going to make sure they both understood just how much they'd hurt me? The answer was clear, and it kept echoing in my mind. I wasn't going to let this slide. Not without consequences. I looked around the room, feeling the cold silence settle over me. I knew I had to be smart about this. No impulsive moves, no screaming fits, just patience, a careful plan, and the resolve to see it through. They thought they could hide their secret forever. Well, I was about to remind them exactly who was in charge here, and I was going to do it on my terms. The game was on, and I could feel myself getting ready for the next move. I had to act now, before they got any more comfortable living their lie. I'd make sure they knew I wasn't the fool they thought I was. And I'd do it in a way that left no doubt. I wouldn't just walk away and pretend it didn't happen. I'd show them what betrayal really meant. The following days were a blur of planning and quiet anger. I kept everything close to the chest, pretending everything was normal while I pieced together my next move. I was living in a kind of fog. My stomach was always knotted, my mind constantly racing. I replayed every little detail of that night I overheard, trying to read between the lines, trying to figure out what they'd been doing, how long they'd been doing it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just confront them blindly. I needed leverage, something that would force their hand, make the truth unavoidable. One thing that became clear was that Lisa was still acting normal around me, but I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. She'd catch my gaze sometimes, and I swear she looked like she wanted to say something but didn't dare. That only fueled my resolve. I started to look into her phone and her emails, searching for more clues. I also set up some discreet audio devices around the house, just to be certain there weren't any other conversations I'd missed. If I was going to do this, I wanted absolute proof. I didn't want just suspicion. I needed undeniable evidence to make her realize I knew everything. I knew I was playing with fire. The betrayal I'd discovered cut so deep that I could taste it. I wanted her to feel the weight of her lies, to understand what it meant to cross that line with someone she supposedly loved. One afternoon, I found her phone unlocked on the kitchen table. I hesitated, then grabbed it. Heart pounding, I scrolled through her messages. Nothing suggestive yet, just the usual clutter of texts, shopping lists, and random memes. But then I saw the timestamp of a message she'd sent to my brother. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I've missed you so much." That was enough. I snapped a screenshot and put the phone back exactly as I'd found it. That night, I told her I needed to talk. Her face was tight, almost defensive. I laid out the evidence showing her the message. She froze, her eyes filling with tears. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered. "Really, because it looks pretty damning to me," I said, voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "You've been lying to my face for months, and my brother, what's his excuse?" She looked away, trembling. "I didn't mean for it to get this far, it just happened. I was lonely, confused. I didn't think you'd find out." I clenched my fists, feeling the fury boiling over. "You didn't think? That's your excuse. You've been sneaking around behind my back all this time, hiding it from me, and you think I'll just forgive and forget." Her voice broke. "Please don't do anything stupid. I still love you. I swear I do." I didn't believe her, not even close. I was seething, but I needed to stay calm. This wasn't just about anger, it was about sending a clear message. I told her I'd need some time to think, but I already knew what I was going to do. I had to escalate this, to make her understand the gravity of what she'd done. The next morning, I started working on my plan. I knew I wouldn't let her slip away just like that. I had to make her see that her betrayal wasn't just a mistake, it was the end of the trust we'd built. I also started talking to a lawyer just to get an idea of my options. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about protecting myself and what was left of our life together. In the meantime, I kept my distance. I didn't want her to suspect that I'd already begun to strike back. I wanted her to feel comfortable, think she still had control. But I was laying the groundwork, setting the trap. Everything was falling into place. One night, I left a small USB recorder in her purse, just in case. I knew they'd be planning their next move. I also made a mental list of what I'd say when I finally confronted them both directly. It had to be perfect, calm, assertive, uncompromising. I wanted her to realize she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. As I sat in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, I realized something. Betrayal isn't just a punch to the gut, it's a poison that slowly eats away everything you thought was real. But I wasn't about to let that poison define me. I was going to fight back, not with violence, but with clarity and resolve. I was ready to confront them face to face, and I knew that when I did, nothing would be the same. The game was about to change, and I was going to make sure they knew I wasn't a pushover. I'd watched, I'd waited, and soon I'd show them just how far I was willing to go to reclaim what was mine. The night I finally decided to confront them, my stomach felt like a lead weight. I'd spent days meticulously planning every detail, trying to separate my rage from my clarity. I knew if I lost control, I'd only make things worse. So I kept telling myself to stay calm, to be precise. I had evidence, I had the truth, and I was ready to use it. That evening, I invited my brother over, pretending I wanted to talk about something important. When he arrived, I noticed his nervous glance. He knew what was coming. I could see it in his eyes. Lisa was in the kitchen pretending to be busy, but I could see her fidgeting. I felt the heat rise again, but I kept my voice measured. "Let's sit down," I said, motioning toward the living room. "There's something I need to get off my chest." He hesitated, then nodded. I saw the sweat beads on his forehead, and I knew I had him right where I wanted. I turned on the voice recorder I'd hidden in my pocket just to have a backup of everything. I didn't trust that they wouldn't deny everything once I laid the truth out. I looked straight at my brother. "You've been lying to me for months. I overheard your late-night conversation with Lisa. I know what you've been doing. Don't bother denying it. I have proof." I pressed play on the recorder. The faint but unmistakable sounds of their whispers filled the room. He flinched, his face draining of color. "It's not what it looks like," he muttered. "Oh, really?" "Because it looks pretty clear to me," I said, voice colder than ice. "You've been sneaking around." "My wife, how long has this been going on?" He looked down, silent. I pressed on. "You tell me, how long have you been lying? How long have you been pretending everything was fine?" He finally looked up, defeated. "A few months. We couldn't help ourselves. It just happened." I shook my head, disgusted. That's your excuse, that you couldn't help yourselves. You think I'm stupid. You think I didn't notice how distant Lisa's been, how she always found reasons to leave early or disappear for hours. He stammered, trying to defend himself, but I cut him off. You know what? I don't want to hear your excuses. I want you both out of my life now. I don't want to see your face again, and I don't want her pretending she's innocent. Lisa finally came into the room, her eyes swollen, trembling. It's not what you think. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was confused, lonely. I made a mistake. I looked at her, feeling the sting of betrayal burn inside me. You made a mistake. You threw away everything we had for a few moments of weakness. You're sorry. Now, she nodded silently, tears streaming down her face. I clenched my fists, feeling the anger surge through me. No more excuses, no more lies. I want you both gone. If I see or hear about either of you again, I swear I'll make sure you regret crossing me. They looked at each other, knowing they'd lost control of the situation. I didn't give them the chance to say anything else. I stood up, grabbing my phone, and made a call to a divorce lawyer just for the record. I knew this was the end, not just of my marriage, but of my family as I once knew it. When they left, I stayed behind, staring at the empty doorway. The house felt colder than ever. My mind was a whirlwind, part relief, part fury. But the one thing I knew for sure was that I'd be okay. No matter how much guilt or shame tried to swallow me, I was in control now. I'd taken back my dignity, even if it hurt like hell. That night I sat alone in the dark, the sound of my own breathing loud in the silence. I thought about what this all meant. Betrayal is a poison, but sometimes you have to drink it to see the truth clearly. I'd made my decision and I was ready to move on. Not because I wanted revenge exactly, but because I refused to let someone else's betrayal define me. Tomorrow would be the beginning of something new. I'd hand over the keys to the house, file for divorce, and start rebuilding. I'd learned that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. So I'd do what I should have done long ago: take control, cut the poison out, and walk forward without looking back. And as I sat there, staring at the dark, I realized one thing. I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel small for what they did. I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life, and I was damn sure I'd come out stronger on the other side. The morning came with a heavy fog hanging over everything. I didn't sleep much, my mind replaying the events of the night before, the confrontation, the betrayal. I woke up feeling hollow but also strangely relieved. I'd finally set things in motion, and now it was just a matter of following through. I reached for the phone and dialed the divorce lawyer I'd contacted the day before. No turning back now. I kept my tone firm when I explained everything: the evidence, the affair, the betrayal. The lawyer listened patiently, then assured me I had a solid case. I told her I wanted everything done quickly and cleanly. I wasn't interested in dragging this out. I knew I needed to act fast to get the house on the market, divide the assets, and put an end to the chaos. I also told her I'd be filing for full custody of the kids, if we had any, or at least to ensure I'd have a clean break. After hanging up, I started packing some essentials. I didn't want to linger in a house filled with memories of lies. I didn't bother telling Lisa I was leaving. What was the point? I was done explaining myself. Instead, I handed her the divorce papers I'd printed out and told her to sign them. Her eyes widened with shock, and she begged me to reconsider, but I was already gone. I didn't want to hear her apologies. I just wanted her out of my life for good. I handed over the keys to the house and told her, "This is over. Don't come near me or the kids again." My voice was steady, but inside I was boiling. I knew that once I signed those papers, I'd be free, free from the lies, from the betrayal. It felt like ripping out a part of myself, but I knew it was necessary. Next, I went to the bank and withdrew a good chunk of money, enough to start over. I didn't think she deserved a dime of the settlement I was about to ask for. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd thrown away, the reality of her choices. I also contacted a therapist because I knew I'd need help processing all this. Not just for me, but for the kids, if we had any. I was determined to rebuild, to come out of this stronger. A few hours later, I sat in my car, watching her try to act normal, pretending everything was fine. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. I had done what I promised myself I'd taken control. I'd shown her that I was no longer a victim of her betrayal. I was the one in charge now. The next step was to find a new place, a fresh start. I started searching for apartments, something small but comfortable. I didn't need luxury, I just needed a space to breathe. As I drove around, my mind kept racing. I knew I'd face a tough road ahead, but I also knew I'd survive. I had to, not just for me, but for my children if they were involved. Part of me wondered if I'd ever truly forgive her, or if I'd just learned to live with the pain. But right now, I focused on the immediate. I made a plan to cut all ties with my wife and brother, to erase the past and move forward. I'd held on to the hope that people could change, but I'd learned the hard way that some betrayals are irreparable. Trust, once shattered, is almost impossible to rebuild. As I parked outside the new apartment I just signed for, I took a deep breath. I looked at the blank walls, the empty space before me. This was the start of something new. It wasn't exactly what I envisioned for my life, but it was better than being a prisoner in a house of lies. I knew I'd have to face the fallout soon, coming home to an empty place, explaining to the kids, dealing with the aftermath. But I also knew this was the right choice. I picked up my phone and texted my closest friend, letting him know everything. His reply was simple: "You're better off without her. You deserve someone who respects you." That small message was enough to make me smile for the first time in days. I was still hurting, still shocked, but I was also free. I closed the door behind me and stepped into my new life. It was raw, it was painful, but it was mine, unfiltered, untainted. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, but I'd also reclaimed my dignity. And I knew this was only the beginning of my recovery. From here, there was only one direction: forward. No matter how much it hurt now, I'd come out the other side stronger. I'd rebuild what was broken, piece by piece. And the one thing I'd remember is that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize what you're truly made of. Sitting alone in this small apartment, I finally let myself breathe. The chaos of the last few weeks had settled enough for me to see things clearly. I'd lost a marriage, yes, but I'd also gained clarity about myself, about what I deserved, and about how much strength I had when I finally decided to stop pretending everything was okay. I kept replaying the moment I handed her the divorce papers. Her face, a mixture of shock, regret, and something I couldn't quite place, will stay with me forever. It was like watching her realize that her lies had finally caught up with her. That look, that moment of realization, was a small victory in a much bigger battle. I had taken control, and she knew it. The house was silent now, no longer filled with the echoes of her footsteps or the whispered lies. I'd already called a moving company, and they'd be here soon to pick up the last of my belongings. I wasn't planning to keep anything that reminded me of the betrayal, only the essentials, the things I could carry forward into this new chapter. I'd start fresh, rebuild myself from the ground up. My mind kept circling back to the betrayal itself. Lisa and my brother thought they could hide their secret forever, that their lies wouldn't be uncovered, but I'd shown them differently. I'd uncovered their deception, gathered proof, and executed my plan with cold precision. I wasn't proud of how I'd done it. I had every right to be furious, but I was proud that I'd finally taken control of the chaos. I'd refused to be a victim anymore. Looking around the empty room, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not happiness, not yet. There was still pain, and I knew I'd carry that with me for a while. But peace, yes. That was something I'd fought for. I'd fought to reclaim my dignity, my self-respect. I'd fought to prove that even after the worst betrayal, I could still stand tall. The lessons I'd learned weren't easy ones. Trust is fragile, it's built carefully, and once broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. But even broken trust can teach you resilience. I'd learned to listen to my instincts, to stop ignoring red flags, to value myself more. More than anything, I'd learned that revenge isn't about hurting others, it's about reclaiming your power, your sense of self. As I packed the last few things, I reflected on what I'd tell anyone in my position. Don't ignore the signs. Don't make excuses for people who betray you. And most importantly, don't stay in a relationship that erodes your self-worth. No matter how much you love someone, if they hurt you enough, walking away is the only way to survive and to begin healing. I took one last look around the apartment, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. This was the end of one chapter, but the start of something new. I reached out, locked the door, and handed over the keys to the landlord. I walked away, carrying only my bag and a resolve that was as heavy as it was light. When I got into my car, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. The pain, the lies, the betrayal gone. What remained was a quiet hope that someday I'd find someone who truly valued me, someone I could trust, someone who wouldn't make me question everything I believed in. I knew there would be days when the hurt would hit hard again, but I also knew I had the strength to get through it, because I'd faced my darkness and I'd come out the other side. Not unscathed, but unbroken. As I drove away from that place, I made a silent vow. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more allowing betrayal to define me. I was finally free, free to rebuild, free to trust again on my own terms. And with that, I stepped into the future, ready to face whatever came next. The pain will fade, the scars will remain, but I'll keep moving forward, stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free.